What's up, everybody? Fahir here from awesometoots.com, and let's talk about arrays. So tell me, what do you know about arrays? I'm just kidding, man. I'm gonna explain arrays. Do you thought that you're gonna explain? Yeah, enough about being silly. But what are actually arrays? Well, arrays are allowing us to store multiple types of the same data inside of that single variable. Let's say, for example, we want to create 10 integers. Instead of us typing like this, int a is equal to 3, int a1 is equal to 5, int a2 is equal to 4. Now, I am already getting bored of this typing. And this is messy. Let's say you create 10. Let's say you need 100. Then what are you going to do? You're going to type 100 times a? No, you are not. Arrays to the rescue. So how can we declare arrays? Well, you declare first the type of the variable you want to store in that array. In our case, integers, and I'm always using integers as an example, but you can use strings, booleans, floats, doubles. It works the same way. So you first type the type of that variable, int, and then you open a square bracket and close a square bracket, and then you give it a name, let's say data, and it is equal to new int array like this. And it is giving us an error right away. You see this red line, and if we go here in our Unity editor, it says array creation must have array size or array initializer. What does that mean? Well, I mentioned a moment ago that if we want to create 10 integers, so let's say we want to create 10 integers and store them in this array. When we create that, we need to denote here that we want to create 10 arrays or 10 integers, excuse me. So this is an array of integers called data, which is equal to a new array of integers of 10 elements. Now, don't be confused about this new keyword. We will cover it in a couple of videos when we start talking about classes and objects. So don't worry about it. Just know that you use new to create a new array of integers. And notice it has 10 elements. So we type here number 10. It means it has 10 elements inside of that array. So what is the value of these elements inside of this array? You are asking me, and I'm answering to you. Well, if you don't initialize these integers, the default value is 0. Same as if we go here and we declare, let's say, int a like this. And we can do this. This is totally legit. It is legal to do. We have declared int a, and just like that, we did not type is equal to 3. And this is allowed for you to do. So you don't have to give it a value. But just know that the default value in this case here, if you don't give it a value, you don't type equal to some value, for example, 3, then the default value is going to be 0. Same way for the array. We did not type the values of these 10 integers, so every single one of these 10 elements inside of this array has a value of 0. How can we change that? Well, we can change that by accessing every single one of those elements in that array and giving it a value. And how can we access those elements? Well, arrays are index-based. And in order to access an array, let's say we want to access the element that's at index 1 index 1, let's say. So if we go here, we need to type data and then open close these curly brackets again. And now we need to pass that index here. So we want to access the first element. So the very first element in the array. We're going to type 0. And now it is equal to 44. And I know you're like, what is this guy doing? I mean, he typed 0, he's talking 1. Is he crazy? No, I'm not crazy, but arrays are 0 based. They have indexes that are 0 based. What does that mean? It means that the very first element inside of the array is not at index 1, but at index 0. So it goes from 0 up to array.length. And when I say array.length, I mean this. We can type data.length. You see this length, and it will give us the value or it will give us the exact number of elements inside of that array. And I'm going to print it out right now just to show you. So if I say print and I say here, the size of the array is, and I'm gonna say plus data.length. Now data is this array right here. So the name of that array is data.length means give us the number of elements inside of yourself. So to say, if I go here in Unity, let me just clear the console and I run it, we are going to see the size of the array is 10, which is true because here we have declared that. So the size of the array is 10. And as I said, the first element begins at the index 0. So the first element begins at index 0 and the last element of the array is at the index data.length minus 1. And let's say that element is equal to, I don't know, 32. So every time the last element is at data length minus 1. Why is it like this? Well, as I already said, the first element is at index 0. That means that the second element is at index 1. The third element is at index 2, so on and so forth, which means that the last element is not at index 10 because we have 10 elements as we just saw. So you have data.length, and when you print that out, you will see that we will have 10 elements or 20 or 30, how many you put them here. But the last element is always at data.length or the length of that array minus 1. And this is how we initialize these arrays. So now the first element has a value of 44. The last element has a value of 32. Let's say the second element, so data1, has a value of 66. And now you are looking at me and asking me again, are you crazy, teacher? You said before that we don't want to type all of those arrays int a is equal to this value, int a1 is equal to that value, but it seems to me that we are doing the same thing here, and you're correct. You're 100% correct, but I'm not crazy. Instead of, I'm going to show you a very faster way how we can initialize these variables or these arrays. So instead of us typing data0 is equal to some value, data1 is equal to some value, we can use a for loop. Yes, that's correct. The for loop that we used in the previous video, we can use it to initialize our array. So we can use it like this. For int I, which is equal to 0, as long as I is less than, now we should have typed here 10, and I'm going to say here I++, and we are going to type here 10 because, yeah, we set here to have 10 elements in the array, but that's a no-no. Why? Well, we can use data.length. So we can go here, we can type data.length. So we don't need to change. Let's say we put here 10, but let's say we change our minds and we put here number 4. So we want 4 elements in the array. Then we need to go back and change that here, which is not good coding. But if we use data.length or the length of that array, then we can, well, use it like this. So now, instead of us using every single index, so the index 0, index 2, index 3, and blah, blah, we can simply use the variable I. So we can go here, we can type data, and the element that's at the I index is equal to some value. Now, I'm not going to put it here at 0. I am going to initialize it with random values. How we can do that? We can use the random class. So you can bookmark this. This is called a random class, and we can use random.range between two numbers. So let's say 0 and 100. So notice here, notice the summary, returns a random float number between and min. So between minimum and maximum, exclusive and maximum inclusive. So this is inclusive and inclusive, read only. Well, in short, this is going to return a number between 0 and 100, and it is going to initialize all of our arrays here. Now, if I were to run our app, we're not going to see anything because we are not printing anything. So if we go here below and we print like this, and I'm going to say the element at index, and I'm going to say plus I, and again, we need to say here plus, and again, another string, has a value of, again, plus data and I. Why am I doing it like this? Well, I want to show you that the index or the element which is at the I index has a value, and we are going to fetch that element. If you are confused what is going on here, we know that we're going to loop. So looping means that I is currently 0, and it's going to go up to I is less than data.length, and we're going to increment I. So in the first iteration, I is going to be equal to 0, which means that we're going to access the element that's at the last index. In the second iteration, I is going to be equal to 1. Why? Well, because we are using this plus plus. I plus plus means I is equal to I plus 1. So adding 1 to I. So in the next iteration, I is equal to 1, which means then we are going to access the second element. Next iteration, I is equal to 2. So on and so forth, we are going to go up to the last element, which is going to be equal to I is equal to 9. Why? Well, data.length is 10. And we are gonna go up to I is less than 10, which means 9 is gonna be the last number that we are gonna use, which is precisely the last element inside of that array. And this is the beauty of for loops. They are used to process arrays, because when I is equal to 10, this condition will not evaluate to be true anymore, and we will not execute everything here. So notice if I go back now in Unity and clear this up and I run my app, notice the element at index 0 has a value of 22. The element at index 1 has a value of 47, so on and so forth. I'm not gonna read through all of these, but we see that we have initialized them with random values. Now, if I rerun this, the values are not going to be the same. So notice now the index 0 has a value of 44. Index 1 has 62. And they did not have those values before. Why is that? Well, every time when we rerun our app, we are going to reinitialize them with random values. We are not saving this data. We're not encrypting it. So that is the reason why. So this is how we process arrays, and this is how we use arrays. Which brings me to another loop, which is called a for each loop. So for each can also be used to process arrays, and it goes like this. So we type for each, open close parentheses, open close curly brackets. And here we're going to say for each integer, now we give it a name, num, in data. Data is our array. So this actually means for every or for each integer, which is called num, in our data array. Now here is an integer, but this is going to depend on the type of the array that you have here. Maybe you have an array of strings or booleans or floats or doubles. Then you will type that type here. Now, this is gonna iterate through the whole array, and this num right here variable, this num, is gonna represent every single element inside of this array. Now, how is that? Well, you know that we are gonna iterate, and then we're gonna access the element that's at index 0, then 1, then 2, and so on and so forth, up to the last element. So during that, each iteration, this num is gonna represent every single that element. So in the first iteration, it is gonna be the first element. In the second iteration, is gonna be the second element in this array, of course, so on and so forth. Now, unfortunately, we cannot use it to initialize. We cannot say this, num is equal to random range 0, 100. If we try this and go in our console, we will see cannot assign to num because it is a for each iteration variable. So we cannot assign to it, but we can print it. So we can go here, we can use print. We can say the value of the element is plus num. We can do this, but let me just go here and check if the error is gone. Yes, it is, of course. And we can do this. We can print it, but before that, we need to initialize it. So I'm gonna simply uncomment this out and comment this line of code. We don't need this to be printed because we're gonna print it here just so that we see that we can use for each to iterate through an array. And if I go here in my Unity and run our app or game, we're going to see the value of the element is 88, 95, 50, and so on and so forth. So we can use also for each, and we notice we don't need to specify how many times it needs to loop as in our for loop, because this one will know automatically based on this data array. So it will loop as many times as many elements are in that array, and we don't need to worry about that. And this is practically it. And also I mentioned now, you don't need to worry about that because it can happen that we access an index out of bounds exception. What does that mean now? Well, that means we have 10 elements in this array. We know that the last element is at index data length -1. In this case, it's index 9 because we have 10 elements. But what happens if we try to access the 10th element in that array? Let's find out. So when I say print here and I say the element at index 10 has a value of, and I'm going to say here plus data, open close curly brackets, and pass the index 10. Of course, this is not giving us any errors or problems, and even if we go here in our Unity, it's not going to tell us anything. But when I click here the run button, bam, index out of range exception. Array index is out of range. You're going to see this a lot during your development. I see it even now. So I'm not going to try to scare you or something, but this happens, and errors and bugs happen even to the best of the best of the best. So don't worry about it. So you're good to go. But I just want you to know what this is about. When you see index array out of range or array index out of range, that means you are trying to access an index in the array that does not exist. If you double click on it, it's going to show you automatically on the line of code where you have a problem. But the point is, index or array index out of range means that you are trying to access some index that actually does not exist. What I mean by that is that this array has 10 elements. The last element is at index 9. We are trying to access the element that's at index 10, which is not possible because we only have 9 indexes from 0 up to 9. That is, we have 10 elements in total, but from 0 up to 9 indexes. After 9, we don't have any more indexes. If we say here that our array has a value of 20 and we try to access 25, that's not gonna happen because we have 20 indexes from 0 up to 19, or 20 elements, but from 0 up to 19 indexes. So index number 25 does not even exist, and you are going to see this type of error. Index or array index out of range. And you will see that a lot, as I already mentioned. And I'm telling you now, bookmark this. This is really important. So bookmark it. Here on Udemy, you have this somewhere here in the middle. You have bookmark it. What is happening here? So bookmark it. And that way you will know where to search it when you have a problem. But this means, and use some, I don't know, pen and write that on your head. When you see array index out of range, it means you are trying to access an index that does not exist. And that's that. And I repeat it so many times because it's really important. Maybe some of you will be bothered by it, but it's really important. That's why I have emphasized it. Anyways, this was about arrays. So in short, you use this open square bracket, close square bracket, name it, new int array. This is how you declare it. Of course, you can declare it same as a variable. So you can say int array, and I can say elements. So elements like this, and I can simply type here without declaring it, without typing is equal to new int, so on and so forth. But this is an empty array, does not even exist. Only when we add or equal to new int array, then we can make this array have elements. So Fahir here from AwesomeTunes.com. End of the video, and I will catch you guys in the next one.